it's Esther. In Lesson 1, we spent some time learning about all of the areas of Canada. Now, we need to zoom in and learn in a bit more detail about each area. So we're going to use the Discover Canada guide, and we're going to look at pages 46 to 48 for this lesson. We're going to start with the Atlantic provinces. Sometimes we call the Atlantic provinces the East Coast, and we say this because they are located along Canada's eastern coast. The natural resources, the forests, the fisheries, the farms, and the mines in this region have been a very important part of the development and history in Canada. Okay, so let's start with Newfoundland and Labrador. This is a very special province in Canada. It's the furthest east, and it has its very own time zone. Newfoundland is famous for fishing and coastal fishing villages. It has its own special culture and music. I've included some Newfoundland music in the resources area of this module. I hope you do take a listen. Now, offshore oil and gas, as well as hydroelectricity. That's electricity that's powered by water. These are all important to the economy of Newfoundland and Labrador. Now we're going to look at Prince Edward Island. Remember, most people call this small island province PEI for short. It's known for beaches, red soil, and potatoes. Historically, it is important as the birthplace of Confederation. Confederation was when Canada became a country. PEI is connected to the mainland of Canada by one of the longest bridges in the world, the Confederation Bridge. Many Canadian children read a story about a little red-headed girl named Anne of Green Gables, and it's set in PEI. Now let's look at Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia has the most people of the Atlantic provinces. It is known as a gateway to Canada, especially because the capital, Halifax, has Canada's largest east coast port with deep water and no ice. There is a lot of shipping, trade, and military near Halifax. Nova Scotia's industries include shipbuilding, fisheries, coal mining, forestry, and agriculture, as well as offshore oil and gas. Now let's talk about New Brunswick. New Brunswick is a smaller province and founded by people in Canada who were loyal to Britain, called United Empire Loyalists. You probably remember that Fredericton is the capital city of New Brunswick, but there are some other bigger cities in New Brunswick. They are called Moncton and St. John. Just pay attention here because this St. John in New Brunswick is not the same St. John's that is in Newfoundland. What stands out about New Brunswick is that it is Canada's only official bilingual province, with about a third of the population living and working in French. The main industries are forestry, fisheries, mining, food processing, and tourism. All of the Atlantic provinces have a rich history of French, English, Celtic, and Gaelic settlement. So that means there's a lot of dance, music, and culture to enjoy. I hope you really get a chance to go visit there sometime. Next, we're going to move into the central provinces of Canada. And what are they? Okay, I hope that you said Ontario and Quebec. If you did, you're right. More than half of Canada's population live in Ontario and Quebec. The Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River are important bodies of water for all of the manufacturing and processing that takes place in these two provinces. More than 3/4 of Canadian-made goods are made in Ontario and Quebec. Okay, so let's look at Quebec up close. Quebec is very unique in Canada, and we're going to learn a lot more about why in following modules and lessons. Nearly 8 million people live in Quebec, and the large majority speak French as their first language. Most of Quebec's people live near the shores of the St. Lawrence River. Quebec is Canada's main producer of pulp and paper and hydroelectricity. There is a lot of fresh water in Quebec. Other industries are forestry, energy, and mining, but also pharmaceuticals and aeronautics. Aeronautics are parts for airplanes and so on. Quebec has its own French culture, movies, music, and Montreal is Canada's second largest city and the second largest French-speaking city outside of Paris, France. Remember, though, that Quebec City is the capital city, even though it's not as big as Montreal. Now let's talk about Ontario. More than 12 million people live in Ontario. That's more than 1/3 of Canadians. Toronto is Canada's largest city, and it's the capital of Ontario, and it's the main financial center of Canada. Ontario has so many people and natural resources, and it's also really close to the Great Lakes. So that's why so many of the people in Ontario work in the service industry and in manufacturing. The Great Lakes are very important in Ontario, and they border on the United States. And here are the names of the lakes: Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, which is entirely in the United States, and Lake Superior back in Canada, and it's the largest freshwater lake in the world. Niagara region is famous for wine and fruit like peaches, grapes, and cherries. There is a lot of agriculture in Ontario with dairy and beef cattle, chickens, vegetable, and grain crops. There are also a lot of French speakers in Ontario as well, the largest number outside of Quebec. Great! So we have spent this lesson learning about the Atlantic provinces and central Canada. In the next lesson, we're going to continue learning about the prairie provinces, the west, and the north. See you again soon.